Hi, everyone. I'm Olivia Collette,
And I'm Randy Masters.
and this is Making Nice, where two people from opposing sides of the political spectrum try to find some common ground. And today we're talking about public broadcasting. Now, I'm very interested in this topic, of course, because as a leftist, I suppose, I'm a big supporter of public broadcasting for many reasons. And I understand that in the U.S. very recently, um,
The House of Representatives,
House
yes.
of Representatives, I'm terribly sorry about that,
Uh-huh.
voted to defund public broadcasting in the U.S. And as a fiscal
Yes.
conservative, I imagine that you would have supported that decision.
Yes, I did.
And
Yes.
why would you support that decision?
It's a fiscal issue. It might surprise you that conservatives listen to and like public broadcasting. They have a good representation of conservatives in their audience. But the question really is, should they be publicly funded? I don't think any conservative wants them to go away or to disappear. We like the show, even though it clearly has a decidedly liberal slant on both, especially on the radio.
Hmm.
But that's fine. We listen to liberal broadcasts as well as conservative. So it's really a matter of funding. Why should um, people who have a taste for that have their choice subsidized in the media markets that we have now with 600 channels on my TV and radio stations all up and down the dial? Maybe it made sense 30 years ago, but we're $14 trillion in debt. Can we afford media once when we can't afford our needs and we're borrowing money every day? That's the issue. That's the funding issue.
To me, when it comes to public broadcasting, and it occurred to me as I was thinking about this whole question back when the House of Representatives voted to defund public broadcasting. Um, what it really does, its real function is a cultural function, and that's something that's really, really difficult to measure, and it's certainly difficult to quantify in dollars and cents. And something that we talked about a little bit earlier was coercion. Well, commercial broadcasting coerces culture just as much as public broadcasting does. Except the way that commercial broadcasting coerces culture and influences culture is through means that are motivated by the bottom line. For example, advertising. Commercial broadcasting exists to make room for this advertising. That's the model that it follows. And in that advertising, you have a number of different messages, but I mean, if you look at the messages for women, for female audiences, if you really deconstruct some of that messaging, it's very disturbing. The impossibly beautiful, well-maintained, skinny woman, and that's a commercial thing. When you go over into public broadcasting, I'm not saying that disappears, well, because the commercials disappear, at least in the NPR model and the public television model. Without that, those ideas are not part of the influence when you're immersed in that experience. But you also have access to a number of different things. I mean, NPR isn't just about one kind of music. It has a whole variety of music, and it mostly it tries to pick from an American repertoire, whereas it gives a voice to those lesser known artists. That commercial radio, in a way, their model, they can't really afford to give a voice to those more independent artists. So what happens to that part of culture that public broadcasting also represents if it disappears?
Well, excellent questions. And again, I don't think conservatives want the voice silenced or want it to disappear. We watch those shows. I recently watched while my wife was away on a cruise. Spent one night watching my local public TV station. They played the 25th anniversary of Les Miserables concert. I love Les Miserables. Might surprise you that I love Broadway musicals, and I I can sing all the songs to Les Miserables, and I did that night. I sang all the songs to Les Miserables, and then what I did was pick up the phone and I called the pledge drive and I joined as a member, and I bought the DVD and I bought the CD, and I supported at my local PBS station doing that. There's a lot of funding sources. I'm starting to notice commercials creeping into public broadcasting. There's philanthropic organizations. There's member support, and so the question is, why can't those funding sources pick up the remaining $500 million that it costs in this country? Why subsidize that with taxpayer money, especially the radio, which has a partisan bias, when we are $14 trillion? I know I keep saying that number. That's a scary number to me, that we're $14 trillion in debt. We have to get to a point where we say we cannot fund with public money our wants when we can't pay for our needs entirely. So I think I think it's a luxury. I'll pay for the luxury. I don't want to see it go away. It cannot be public funded anymore.
But that presupposes that culture is not a need, and I think it is.
That's a good point.
So, I mean,
But I think country music is a need. So, is my country music choice, or my I listen to a wide range of music. Is my music selection less culturally needed than opera?
but there's a section, a sector of NPR that focuses on country music. I mean, that's represented. I mean, if I actually really admire NPR. I've been a fan of the CBC for years and years and years, but there was a time when the CBC was just classical music programming, and they've recently done a reboot to try and represent a larger variety of tastes. But NPR represents a wide variety of needs, and they've really exploited their online presence to really demonstrate a wide variety of programming to make it accessible to everybody, and that's something that really impresses me about NPR. And when I consider that the amount of money spent on public broadcasting in the U.S. is a small fraction compared to other programs that some people are really against. I mean, every time you send any army anywhere, it costs billions of dollars, and the same people who were behind Bush in Iraq are not behind Barack Obama in Libya. I'm not behind either, but I'm just saying, that's billions of dollars right there, on strategies that people on either side will say at any given moment, we don't need this. And that's so much more money than public broadcasting. But
it is $500 million. It is $500 million a year, and that is a substantial amount of money for a want. Now, I totally support reevaluating the defense budget. I'm kind of in the Pat Buchanan isolationist wing, and I would pull many of our troops home, and all of it has to be on the table at the price we're at right now. But we really have to say, can we afford our wants? We got to cut in our needs as well, but we cannot afford our wants. Do I want to see it disappear? No, I listen to it. I was telling you, when I was in college, I was a control room operator for an NPR member station at a university, and I listened to opera in my right ear and talk shows of William Buckley in my left ear. And I appreciated the NPR culture, and I have ever since I was an operator in that control room. And even from that experience, having worked there, liking it, I still say we can't afford it. Public financed, privately. If you like it, step up and pay for it.
But if it disappears,
it can't be taxpayer time.
If it disappears, though, that's the thing. It's very difficult to fund that level of culture commercially, and so my concern is the way that we experience that kind of culture will not only change, it'll disappear. It just simply won't be available anymore. And then and keeping in mind that you have access to all different kinds of American music via NPR. If I'm just talking just in terms of music, never mind the rest of the content, because they've got incredibly creative talk radio as well. That model can't. That model would have a very hard time surviving commercially in the same way that it does now. And if it does, what do you think the cultural impact would be? I mean, this is not something that we can measure in dollars and cents, but it's still important.
All good arguments. I understand the arguments. I think it's a lack of confidence on the left's part to say this won't survive commercially. I think you haven't tried to have it survive commercially. And again, there's all kinds of funding sources for it, and I don't want to see it go away. But I would just ask the starkest of questions, which is, if our country goes bankrupt, can we afford NPR? And if it goes bankrupt, will we say, what were we doing paying for our wants when we couldn't afford our needs? And we are right on the verge of bankruptcy. We have a Congress that cannot decide on the debt limit right now, and we are on the verge of a credit default. And we got two houses of Congress and a president that can't agree on whether to raise the debt limit, whether to cut spending. And conservatives have a sense of urgency. Why are we paying for wants, luxuries, opera, classical music? And we're paying for that. Sure, it's $500 million, but if you take every program that costs $500 million as a want and take it off the board, we'll come back to it later when we're solvent, but we're not solvent.
But sorry, go on.
No, your turn. It's good time.
But I mean, survival as a commercial entity, I think, is one thing, but whether or not it'll survive at all is not really my issue. What I'm saying is it won't exist the way that we experience it now, because it will exist to please the advertiser. And that's what commercial radio is. That's what commercial TV is. Shows are taken off the air. Really good shows are taken off the air because they're not bringing in enough ratings, and that does not please the advertisers. That's what the advertiser is buying. Public radio doesn't measure a show's quality by ratings. It measures it by its quality alone. And the minute that it becomes commercial, that won't happen anymore, because in a commercial model, it can't.
It's a good argument. It's a valid argument. But the argument is really, are we on the verge of going broke, or are we not? And on the right, the conservatives, the Tea Party exists because we believe we're on the verge of going broke. The left is denying debt is a problem. What debt? That's not a problem. Well, those are two very different worldviews right now, and that's what's really clashing over the NPR. Are we on the verge of going bankrupt, or aren't we? If we aren't, then the luxuries are okay. We can pay for the luxuries. If we are, why are we paying for luxuries when we're borrowing? I don't even know the number. $44,000 a minute we're borrowing. Are we going to borrow $44,000 a minute to pay for our wants? And so that I can sing Les Miserables on PBS, I can do that on my own. An NPR question is really a broader question. Are we on the verge of bankruptcy, or are we not? And if those two different questions arrive at two different views of whether we should pay for NPR or not.
I can't argue on the side of debt. I'm not in denial that there's an enormous debt in the U.S. But if you get rid of the most important cultural tool that you have, that everybody has access to, and that is not tainted by the needs of the advertisers, what is it going to cost you in the long term?
Right.
Anyway, we've got to wrap it up. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off or anything like that, but we've got to wrap it up.
Good discussion.
very good discussion. I'm glad that that we did discuss it, and I look forward to comments from anybody who wants to leave some on our channel. So thanks for a great debate, Randy, and we'll be seeing you next time.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye.